I was the assistant to a ridiculously wealthy heir, and I'd been secretly in love with him for years. He was never short on men. The day he announced his engagement, I handed in my resignation. His arch-rival sent me a job offer almost immediately. I was on a business trip with my new boss when our plane was forcibly grounded. My old boss stood there, glaring at us. "Oliver, who the hell gave you permission to leave? Get your ass down here." I rushed to the bar's private room with the documents just after midnight. Inside, a mess of drunk men and women were all over each other. Jackson had a beautiful guy sitting on his lap, arms wrapped around his neck, kissing him. The guy looked familiar. I think he was an actor from that new hit movie. I swallowed the bitter feeling in my chest and stepped forward to hand over the file. Jackson glanced at his watch and chuckled. Before he could speak, the pretty boy in his arms said, "Wow, Jackson, your assistant really is something else. He got here in 30 minutes. See? What did I tell you? He does whatever I say. You win, Jackson. Whatever you want tonight, I'm all yours." The guy winked, his meaning perfectly clear. Jackson just wrapped an arm around his waist, not even sparing me a glance. My hand froze in mid-air. I pulled the file back, my knuckles white, my face a blank mask. So that's why he'd insisted I come at this hour. It was all for a stupid bet. Jackson handed the actor a black card and told him to get a room upstairs. "Oliver, getting here on such short notice, good work. It's my job, sir." I didn't want to drink, but he shoved a glass into my hands. "That was Jackson for you. He always got what he wanted, one way or another." I downed the drink in one go and had to respond respectfully. "Thank you, sir." Suddenly, he leaned in close. He could hold his liquor well. Even drunk, his face wasn't flushed, but his eyes were a little hazy, sparkling with a scattered light. I was captivated for a second. I tried to back away, but he wrapped an arm around my neck. "Oliver, you once said you'd do anything for me, right?" "Yes." Jackson smiled, but the light in his eyes slowly faded. Jackson saved me back in college. He still has a nasty scar on his arm from where the mugger's knife cut him. That's why I took the job as his assistant after graduation, taking care of his every need without complaint. At first, he still treated me like an old classmate, but eventually he started taking out his work frustrations on me. The bleeding was so bad it scared the guy he was with, and the first thing Jackson did was make me apologize to the guy for ruining their fun. He gave me a lot of money and time off afterward, but as the scar on my forehead healed, something else faded away with it. Now, Jackson was getting engaged at the end of the month. My hopeless, secret crush was finally, officially over. Leaving the private room, Jackson was schmoozing with a business partner, all fake smiles and handshakes. He waved me over and told me to take a Mr. Lee home. Mr. Lee was a man in his 40s. He looked respectable, always smiling, but the way he'd been looking at me all night made my skin crawl. I thought I was just supposed to drive him, but he led me upstairs to the hotel instead. I was still confused in the elevator, until an unnatural heat started spreading through my body. A sickening heat pulsed through my veins. Mr. Lee noticed something was wrong. He pretended to steady me, but his hand landed on my waist. This was way over the line. "Oliver, you're all flushed. It makes you even more handsome. I haven't met a guy with your kind of class in a long time. So different from the boys they have for hire here." He reached out to touch me. I tried to pull away, but I had no strength. "Get off me. Why are you fighting it? Didn't you know? Your boss gave you to me." My eyes went wide. Something inside me shattered. Your boss was practically begging me to sign this contract. $100 million deal. You're just a little dessert to close it out. He was still smiling, but his hand disgustingly crept toward my collar. "So you'd better behave. You wouldn't want to embarrass him." "Jackson." My loyalty meant nothing. It was worthless. I took a deep breath and laughed coldly. "Well, I must be worth a lot then." Ding. The elevator arrived. I kicked him hard, then punched him with all my remaining strength, shoving him out of the elevator. Mr. Lee stumbled and fell, cursing. Before he could get up, I slammed the button for the top floor so he couldn't follow me. I collapsed onto the elevator floor, my fingers trembling. felt like ants were crawling all over my skin. An itching, burning sensation took over. It was agony. The elevator doors opened, and a pair of polished leather shoes came into view. I was still on the floor, struggling to look up. "Please, call an ambulance." My eyes met the handsome face of a man looking down at me. He gave a slight smile, but his eyes held a cool, sharp edge. "Well, if it isn't Jackson's little assistant." His tone was surprised, but there was an icy undercurrent to it. Of course I knew who he was. Alexander Sterling, heir to the Sterling Corporation. Jackson's biggest business rival. Jackson's father loved to praise Alexander to motivate his son, which only made Jackson hate him more. Earlier this year, Jackson had even pulled a dirty move to snatch a deal right out from under Alexander. I frowned. My luck was just getting worse and worse. Alexander watched me with a detached air. He was smiling, but it sent a chill down my spine. I figured he'd just leave me there. Just as the doors were closing, a hand shot out to stop them. Alexander bent down and helped me up. The pleasant scent of sandalwood washed over me. "Little assistant, is this how your boss treats you?" I was barely conscious, unable to give him a coherent answer. He grabbed my hands to stop me from tearing at my clothes. Alexander took me to the presidential suite and immediately called his private doctor. The night was torture. In my hazy sleep, I heard my phone ringing nonstop, until someone silenced it for me. I'd worked for Jackson for 7 years. It was the first time I'd ever ignored his call. When I woke up the next day, the sun was blinding. I walked wearily out of the bedroom and found Alexander still there. He was sitting at a desk, wearing a pair of rimless glasses, looking like he'd just finished a video conference. I greeted him awkwardly. Alexander smiled and told me to have breakfast before I left. I drank a glass of milk and looked at the 30+ missed calls on my phone. My skin crawled. "Mr. Sterling, thank you for last night. If you ever need anything, I'll do my best to help." "Really?" "Yes." Alexander stroked his chin, a smile in his eyes. His phone buzzed. He picked up his jacket and put it on. "I'll hold you to that. I have to catch a flight, so I'm heading out." I got up to leave with him. We opened the door right as Jackson was walking by. The young actor was trailing behind him, looking exhausted and grumpy. "Oliver?" Jackson's eyes widened in fury. "Where the hell have you been? Do you have any idea how long I looked for you last night? Did he really look for me?" The elevator, the hotel's top floor, it was all under surveillance. I'd even been in the room right across the hall from his. "And what the fuck are you doing coming out of a room with him?" Seeing him like this, I couldn't help but fire back a sarcastic reply. "Don't you remember what you did last night, sir?" "You too." Jackson choked on his words, his gaze darting between Alexander and me, his anger hot enough to burn holes in us. He gritted his teeth and grabbed my arm. "Oliver, you're coming with me. Hold on." Alexander spoke calmly, stepping in front of him. Seeing how pissed Jackson was seemed to put Alexander in a great mood. He smiled warmly at me, reached out to straighten my collar, and said in an intimate tone, "Take care of yourself, Oliver." I knew he was just doing it to provoke Jackson, but it still caught me off guard. Jackson's brow furrowed, and he shoved him away. "Sterling, he's my guy. He doesn't need your concern." As we left the hotel, the young actor was still trailing behind Jackson. The guy looked at me, confused, and muttered, "Jackson, I thought we were going to get breakfast?" "Breakfast? What breakfast? Get lost." Jackson was furious. The young actor frowned but didn't dare argue. He just forced a smile and scurried away. Jackson shoved me into the car. He glared at me, enraged, and reached for my shirt. I quickly pushed him away. "What are you doing? Oliver, did you fucking sleep with Alexander? What difference would it make? You were the one who gave me away, weren't you?" I'd never talked back to him before, but knowing I was about to quit, I wasn't going to take it anymore. Jackson's eyes darted away for a second. He was obviously feeling guilty, and his anger subsided a little. "Yesterday, I'd had too much to drink. I just said it without thinking. Besides, you know the company's been in a rough patch lately. I didn't have a choice." I stared at him, my face expressionless. My silence seemed to make him uncomfortable, and his voice rose. Oliver, don't you forget who saved your life, who gave you a high-paying job right out of college. You said you'd do anything to help me, and now you do this? You're so ungrateful. The louder he yelled, the more guilty he was. I sneered. You're right. I shouldn't have ruined your big deal. Then what's the deal with you and Alexander? You know I can't stand him, and yet nothing happened. It was just a coincidence. I gave him the short version. Jackson nodded, seeming to breathe a sigh of relief. Better be. Stay away from him from now on. I didn't say anything. He loosened his tie and told me to drive, clearly desperate to change the subject. On the way to his office, Jackson took a call. It sounded like his fiancée. He showered her with sweet nothings, and she sounded delighted. After hanging up, Jackson told me to order flowers and book a restaurant. He was clearly going to see her. I agreed to everything, but I couldn't help but mock myself internally. Oliver, the man you've loved for years has turned into the very person you despise most. With the engagement party at the end of the month, there was a lot to do. I did my job as usual, but I stopped giving Jackson any extra attention. He noticed something was off and asked if I was too busy. I just brushed it off, no longer confiding in him. On the day of the party, a crowd of wealthy and influential families showed up to celebrate. I was at the office, finishing up my handover notes. Then I emailed my resignation letter to Jackson. I shut down my computer and let out a long breath. A wave of relief washed over me. Just as I walked out of the office, Jackson called. Oliver, where are you? Where did you put my engagement ring? I don't know. I've already resigned. You should ask your new assistant about that. What? Resigned? Jackson paused, his voice tinged with anger. Who said you could resign? Oliver, is this some kind of joke? I've completed the handover. Thank you for everything over the years, Jackson. Hearing me use his full name, something I hadn't done in a long time, he knew I was serious. Jackson's voice became rushed, almost panicked. Why are you quitting all of a sudden? Is it because of what happened at the bar? I already explained that to you. You've been by my side for so long. How can you just up and leave? Oliver, you need to think this through. Do you really think you'll find a better paying job than this one if you leave my company? I didn't want to hear his questions. I hung up and blocked his number. I packed my things and went home, planning to take a few days off. I thought I'd be lost and anxious after quitting without a backup plan. But as soon as I opened my laptop, I saw a new email. It was a job offer from the Sterling Corporation. They had an opening for a project manager and wanted to know if I was interested. They certainly worked fast. I saw Alexander's contact information at the bottom of the email and understood immediately. This must have been the favor he was talking about. Fine by me. I was ready to try something new. The engagement ceremony started at 5 p.m. My phone started ringing off the hook, all calls from Jackson using other people's phones. I didn't have time for that. I was busy in the kitchen, making myself a nice meal to celebrate. From now on, I was going to live for myself. I started a trial period at Sterling Corporation, and after getting familiar with the process, I slowly got the hang of things. I saw Alexander again a week later when he returned from a business trip. He met with me over lunch and asked me to join him on a drone project in the next province. I agreed, but I couldn't help asking, why did you hire me as a project manager? I don't have any experience in this area. Experience is something you build. I've seen you work for Jackson, and I think you're very capable. I believe you can make great contributions to Sterling. He wasn't wearing his glasses. His expression was a bit serious and cool, but his eyes were full of appreciation. I pressed my lips together. Being praised so directly by Alexander made me feel a little pleased. After all, who doesn't like being recognized? Jackson used to say that after being an assistant for so long, I wouldn't know how to do anything else, so I should just be his assistant for life. But now my chance to break through had come. I studied the project materials in advance and got everything ready. But on the day of the trip, our plane was stopped just before takeoff. I glanced at my watch, worried we'd be late for Alexander's meeting with the client. Suddenly, the cabin door opened. Oliver, who said you could leave? Why aren't you answering my calls? He reached out to grab me, but I dodged him. The other passengers were staring, and I felt a hot flush of embarrassment. Jackson, what do you think you're doing? I should be asking you that. Did you leave me just to go work for Alexander Sterling? Can he really give you a better offer? That's my business, and it has nothing to do with you. I looked at him coldly. Something I said must have triggered him, because he suddenly glared and grabbed me. It has everything to do with me. Don't you love me? How could you leave me? Oliver, you said you'd always be with me. You know I hate him, yet you went to work for him. You were never like this before. Jackson's voice was rising, and he didn't care one bit that he was outing me in a public place. People around us started whispering. Alexander glanced at me, his expression still calm, as if he wasn't surprised at all. My face went pale. I had never been so humiliated. I took a deep breath and pushed him away with a cold look. Jackson, look at yourself right now. What part of you is still worth loving? He knew I loved him all along, and he used my feelings for him to do whatever he wanted. And I was stupid enough to think I'd hidden it so well. He had probably laughed at me countless times. You don't love me anymore? Jackson froze, muttering to himself. That's impossible. You loved me so much before. You can't just let it go. You must be mad at me for something I did, right?
Oliver, I'm sorry.
Come back with me. I won't make you angry anymore. I took a step back, my expression blank, creating a clear distance between us. Mr. Liu, please leave. I have to accompany my boss on a business trip. Jackson clenched his fists. Seeing the smug look in Alexander's eyes, his anger flared. Ha! If you don't come back with me today, then you're not going anywhere. This airline is partially owned by my family. If I say it doesn't fly, none of you are leaving. I froze. I couldn't believe he would sink this low. Complaints started rising from the other passengers. I looked at Alexander worriedly, about to apologize, when he suddenly stood up and came to my side. Jackson, have you forgotten that your family's finances are on the brink of collapse? You sold off your shares in this airline a long time ago. Jackson gritted his teeth.
Impossible.
Why don't you ask me how I know? Jackson's eyes flickered with doubt, and he fell silent. He'd probably already guessed the answer. Alexander smiled faintly. Because this airline is mine now. He signaled for security to remove Jackson and his entourage, adding that he'd be billing him for the delay. Jackson glared at him, shoving the guards away like a madman. Oliver, you're not going with him. Get down here. He's my manager. Don't touch him. Alexander's voice turned cold. He gave a nod, and several more security guards came forward and restrained Jackson and his useless bodyguards. Jackson was dragged off the plane in front of everyone, utterly humiliated. Sterling, you son of a bitch. Just you wait. Alexander nodded slowly. I'll be waiting, but you should probably go deal with your debts first, Jackson. The plane was finally quiet. I returned to my seat, full of guilt. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. I wasted your time. It's nothing. You're bound to run into a few mad dogs in life. He didn't seem to care at all. He opened his tablet and asked if I wanted to watch a movie with him. I was taken aback. I couldn't believe he was in the mood for entertainment. I thought he was always a meticulous workaholic. I huddled together with Alexander to watch a movie he'd downloaded. The pleasant scent of sandalwood kept wafting from him. The unpleasantness from earlier gradually faded away. After arriving in El City and meeting the client, we quickly got to work. It was my first time as a project manager, and I missed some key details. The proposal we presented wasn't as good as the one from a competing company. My face flushed with shame as the client pointed out my mistakes in a passive-aggressive tone. When we left the meeting room, I watched Alexander's face and rushed to apologize. He was still calm, not angry at all. He just urged me to get a second proposal ready quickly. Jackson used to fly off the handle all the time, so Alexander's composure made me see him in a new light. Alexander told me that from now on, for anything I do, I should always have a plan be ready to ensure success. I took his advice to heart and threw myself back into my work. Alexander was very busy, but whenever I had a question, he would always answer it thoroughly. My team and I worked for days, pulling all-nighters to collect new data and revise the proposal. Late one night, I went to a convenience store for coffee. When I got back to the hotel, I saw a familiar figure standing in the lobby. Oliver. Jackson's eyes were dark as he stared at me. He looked haggard, like he'd been having a rough time lately. What are you doing here? I frowned, looking around cautiously. I'm here to take you back. Back? I scoffed. Jackson, what are you talking about?
I've resigned.
I have nothing to do with you anymore. How could we have nothing to do with each other? He gritted his teeth and stepped closer, his gaze locking onto mine. Oliver, I called off the engagement. Come back with me. You don't have to be my assistant. We can be friends again. Okay? I want to go back to how things were. My eyes widened in shock. That's impossible. We can't go back. Why not? Or, do you want to date? I can be with you. I'll agree to anything you say. Just come with me. What are you talking about? I don't love you anymore. I don't want anything to do with you ever again. Don't love me? I don't believe you. His eyes darkened, the rims turning red. Oliver, are you still holding a grudge about what happened at the bar? I came all this way to beg you. What more do you want? Don't forget, I saved your life. You can't leave me. I stood there stunned. Even with him trying to guilt-trip me, I felt nothing. You did save me, and I'm grateful for that. But in the 7 years since freshman year of college, aren't the scars on my forehead and my knees enough to repay the one on your arm? I said it calmly, even lifting my pant leg to show him. Jackson's expression changed. He definitely remembered. The scar on my knee was from when he sent me to pick up one of his boy toys. The guy threw a tantrum at the ski resort and took his anger out on me, deliberately pushing me down the slope. I don't know how to ski. If I hadn't grabbed the safety railing, I probably would have broken my spine. When Jackson saw the faded white scar, a flicker of pain crossed his eyes. He told me you fell on your own, and you believed him. So tell me, why should I love someone who believes everyone but me? I coolly straightened my pants, looking at him as if he were a stranger. Jackson's lips trembled, and he grabbed my arm frantically. Oliver, I was wrong. I really didn't know. Didn't you? You didn't know I was being bullied by your little lovers? You didn't know you were treating me like a pet for your amusement? And I suppose you also didn't know you were pimping me out to a client for your own gain? One thing after another, it all came crashing down, making the selfish, arrogant young master's face turn pale. It wasn't that Jackson didn't know. He was just used to it. That's why even though he knew I loved him, he didn't care. I'm sorry, he whispered, unaccustomed to apologizing to someone he considered beneath him. Jackson, if you're really sorry, then stop coming to find me. I said it coldly and turned to walk into the hotel. Jackson grabbed me again, clinging to me like I was a lifeline. No, you can't go. You have no idea what my life has been like since you left. Oliver, please come back. His voice trembled, on the verge of tears. Suddenly, a low chuckle echoed through the lobby. I turned my head and saw Alexander leaning against a pillar, casually enjoying the miserable look on Jackson's face. I had no idea when he'd shown up or how much he'd heard. Don't tell me you're about to cry, Jackson, Alexander said lazily, a wicked glint in his eyes. I'm actually curious. What has your life been like without your little assistant? Go on, tell us. The sarcasm was thick. Jackson was still fuming from their last encounter, and this just added fuel to the fire. He lunged forward, grabbing Alexander's collar and swinging a punch. But Alexander was no pushover. He'd trained in martial arts and easily dodged the blow. Sterling, what the hell are you so smug about? I'll get Oliver back sooner or later. Try me. Alexander's face hardened, and he started throwing punches back. The two of them were actually fighting. Two CEOs brawling in a hotel lobby. If someone filmed this, it would be a huge scandal. Seeing hotel security approaching, Jackson sneered. Sterling, your little victory won't last long. I'll be waiting. Alexander touched his ear, completely immune to his empty threats. With Alexander's people there, Jackson couldn't get into the hotel. He could only watch as we walked away. I could feel his burning gaze on my back, but I didn't look back. In the elevator, I looked Alexander over carefully. Seeing he wasn't hurt, I felt a sense of relief. Mr. Sterling, thank you for that. How are you going to thank me? Alexander tilted his head, a curious look in his eyes. The light above us made them sparkle. I suddenly felt nervous. I clutched the bag in my hand and pulled out a can of coffee. Coffee? A second later, I remembered the expensive coffee beans in his office and figured he probably wouldn't drink this instant stuff. Just as I was about to pull my hand back, he took it, a faint smile on his lips. Next time you're in trouble, you can call me too. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. When I got back to my room, a couple of colleagues were finishing up their work. Two of the women were unpacking takeout, saying Mr. Sterling had ordered us all a late-night meal. It was just a snack, but Alexander had ordered a huge variety of dishes. He was incredibly generous, and coincidentally, most of the food was my favorite. My impression of my new boss was getting better and better. I was grateful to Alexander for giving me this chance. He never questioned me, never pried into my past with Jackson, and certainly didn't care that I was gay. I wished I had met such a good boss sooner. My team and I revised the proposal again and again. The client had been disappointed with our first attempt, but I researched his interests and managed to coincidentally run into him at his favorite restaurant. While he was eating, I took the opportunity to present my new proposal. It was a long shot, but in the end, my efforts paid off and I won him over. Alexander praised our team, and the look of appreciation in his eyes deepened. On the flight back, Alexander made a formal announcement. Mr. Chun, excellent work. Congratulations on passing your trial period. You are now officially a project manager. You'll continue to oversee the execution of this project. I'll do my best, Mr. Sterling. I replied respectfully, feeling a thrill of excitement. I felt like a kid who'd just been praised by the teacher, and my ears started to burn. He looked at my face and couldn't help but reach out. I froze for a second, my eyes meeting his. He seemed to snap out of it, and his fingers landed on my shoulder. Keep it up, Oliver. You can go far. Thank you. It had been a long time since anyone had encouraged me like that. Back at the company, I dove into the project with my team. I rarely saw Alexander. He was always busy, either in meetings or on business trips. He would check in on the project's progress and ask if I was running into any trouble. I figured he must care a lot about this project, so I worked even harder. Sometimes I'd screw up, and Alexander would tell me off, but then he'd calmly guide me on how to fix my mistakes. He really was a great boss. The moment the drone project hit the market, it brought in a significant profit. It was all thanks to Alexander, my mentor. He knew how to bring out the best in me. I took the quarterly report to his office to update him. The office door was slightly ajar, and I could hear Alexander talking to his friend. They mentioned my name, and my hand, poised to knock, froze. Alexander's office had a small balcony filled with flower pots. He seemed to have taken up gardening recently. He was standing on the balcony, admiring the small buds, while his friend, Derek, watched him with a teasing smile. So how does it feel? Snatching away that punk Jackson's assistant must feel pretty good, right? It's all right. All right? Didn't you do all this because you knew he actually cared about Oliver? I heard Jackson is a total wreck, and all you have to say is, it's all right? Alexander smiled but didn't say anything. I thought your goal was just to mess with Jackson. The Liu family is in a bad spot right now, so why haven't you made your move? Alexander, I don't know, you seem different this time. Alexander didn't deny it, which was basically an admission. I stood by the door, listening, but I didn't feel much of anything. Whatever Alexander's reasons were for offering me the job, he had helped me break out of my professional rut. Derek watched Alexander staring blankly at the flower pots and frowned. Why aren't you saying anything? Since when are you interested in gardening? Didn't you used to think this stuff was a waste of time? It's not a waste of time if you enjoy it. Alexander picked up a watering can and slowly watered the plants. The water sprayed out, catching the sunlight and creating a mini rainbow that made Alexander look incredibly charming. I was so mesmerized I forgot to knock. That was Alexander, always calm, gentle, and unhurried, but with a plan up his sleeve. Derek turned to pour a drink and our eyes met. I flinched and quickly knocked on the door to avoid being caught eavesdropping. I went in to give my report, and Derek made an excuse to leave. After hearing my update, Alexander raised an eyebrow. He was clearly pleased. Excellent work, Oliver. Let's take your team out for dinner tonight. My treat. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. The team dinner was at a famous restaurant. Everyone was a bit stiff at first, probably because Alexander was there. But after a few drinks and some party games, the atmosphere loosened up. As I watched them laughing and joking, my phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. A familiar voice, thick with drunkenness, came through the phone. Oliver, where are you? I miss you so much. Before he could finish, I hung up and blocked the number. Lately, Jackson had been constantly calling and texting me from different numbers. It was incredibly annoying. I took a sip of my drink and noticed Alexander staring at me, a smile in his eyes. He must have guessed who was calling. My former employer with a complicated history. I leaned closer to him and explained, "Don't worry, Mr. Sterling. I won't have anything to do with the Lou Corporation ever again. I trust you, Oliver." Alexander turned his head to look at me, bringing us even closer. His eyelashes were distinct, and I could clearly see the light dancing in his eyes. So beautiful. I know it's weird to call a man beautiful, but I couldn't think of another word. Alexander stared at me, his Adam's apple bobbed, and he lifted a hand to cover my eyes. "Oliver, don't look at me like that." Through the gaps between his warm fingers, I could see his eyes had darkened. I snapped back to reality. "Sorry, Mr. Sterling. I think I've had too much to drink." My head was spinning, and my heart was beating a little too fast. Alexander didn't seem to mind. He just took a sip of his drink. After dinner, Alexander said he was going my way and offered me a ride. The car was quiet. Alexander and I sat in the back. After what had just happened, I felt a bit awkward and didn't say anything. But then Alexander broke the silence. "You heard Derek and me talking today, didn't you?" Caught off guard, my eyes darted away. I had no choice but to nod. "Yes. I'm sorry. Why are you always apologizing?" He looked at me, amused. "Since you heard, why didn't you ask me about it? Aren't you curious about my real reason for hiring you?" "No. I should be thanking you for giving me a new opportunity." I said it respectfully, thinking it was the perfect ass-kissing answer. But Alexander just stared at me, his expression flat, the earlier amusement gone. After a long moment, he sighed. The company was working on a new project. I was buried in work and hadn't seen Alexander for several days. A few of the women on my team loved to gossip. During lunch, they were discussing which family the Lou heir would end up marrying into. I raised an eyebrow and did a quick search on the Lou Corporation's recent situation. The company was failing, and Jackson had broken off his engagement. Things were not going well for him. No wonder he hadn't had time to harass me lately. That afternoon, just as I was about to leave work, I got a call from Alexander. His breathing was heavy, he sounded drunk. "Oliver, are you still at the office? Could you bring me the file on my desk?" "Of course." After hanging up, I instinctively checked his schedule. It was an old habit from my assistant days, always thinking ahead for my boss. Alexander had a flight to catch tonight for a meeting in another city. He was obviously drunk now. What if he missed it? I quickly grabbed the file from his office, along with some sobriety pills, stomach medicine, and a fresh designer suit. The client seemed very satisfied after reviewing the details. Once the contract was signed, Alexander finally relaxed. As we walked out of the restaurant, he stumbled, and I quickly steadied him. "Mr. Sterling, does your stomach hurt? Are you dizzy? I brought medicine. The car is outside. I'll drive you to the airport. There are spare clothes in the car." Alexander looked at me, surprised, then smiled. "Oliver, you're more thoughtful than my own assistant." I froze, my ears turning inexplicably hot. Alexander's assistant had a family emergency today and had to take the day off otherwise. It wouldn't have been me. "If you weren't so good at your job, I'd be tempted to make you my assistant," Alexander said softly, taking one of the sobriety pills. "I work for you either way, Mr. Sterling. If there's anything you need, just let me know." "Is that so?" He raised an eyebrow, a teasing glint in his eyes. "But I don't need you to do anything. I just want—" Before Alexander could finish, he saw Jackson at the restaurant entrance. Jackson had also just finished a business dinner and had had a lot to drink. His eyes were glazed over. He looked up, lost, and met Alexander's challenging gaze. Oliver, I suddenly feel really dizzy. Alexander deliberately put his arm around my shoulders, leaning in close, making it look intimate. Jackson frowned and walked over, his fists clenched tight. Oliver, what are you two doing? Is this how you work for him? He's my boss. No one else has a right to interfere. My distant tone seemed to wound Jackson. He saw the medicine and warm water in my hands, and his eyes widened in anger. I'm the one who was with you for 7 years. Why are you so good to him? What right does he have? Get over here. You're not allowed to stand next to him. I frowned, annoyed by his relentless pestering. Jackson, stop making a scene. Who's making a scene? How many times have I called you? How many texts have I sent? Why won't you answer me? Jackson grabbed my hand, ignoring the stares of passers-by. Why are you being so cruel to me? I know I was wrong. I haven't been with anyone else. I haven't messed around. Oliver, why are you still ignoring me? What do I have to do to make you come back? I looked at him calmly. I saw no love in his eyes, only endless resentment. To Jackson, I was just a possession, and he didn't like anyone else having me. Alexander leaned on me and deliberately whined, Oliver, I don't feel so good. What should I do? His voice was low and soft, almost like he was pouting. I quickly nodded. Right away, Mr. Sterling. I'll get you out of here. Jackson's assistant finally arrived and tried to help him, but Jackson shoved him away. Oliver, you think Alexander Sterling is some saint? Don't be fooled by him. He's just using you. Jackson, you should worry about yourself. Even if Alexander was using me, how was that any different from the way Jackson had played with me for years? As Alexander passed Jackson, he grinned mischievously and waved. Goodbye, Jackson. Jackson gritted his teeth, looking like he wanted to tear him apart. Once in the car, I handed Alexander the clothes I had prepared. I was about to start the engine when he leaned forward from the back seat and cupped the back of my neck. Oliver, even if I wanted to get back at Jackson, I never planned on using you to do it. Because he's not worth it. His breath ghosted over my ear, and my fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I understand, Mr. Sterling. Don't call me Mr. Sterling. When we're alone, you can call me by my name. Was that really okay? I met his intense gaze in the rearview mirror and figured he must be drunk. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been acting so childishly, clinging to me just to show off to Jackson. Okay, just sit back. I'm about to drive. Alexander sat back, drank some warm water, and started changing his clothes. I stared straight ahead, but he kept asking me where his tie was or if I brought his cufflinks. I answered each question, my eyes accidentally catching his reflection in the mirror as he was buttoning his shirt. He still had his glasses on, and with his shirt unbuttoned, revealing the defined lines of his chest, he looked like a total gentleman scoundrel. I'm a guy who likes guys, and I couldn't help but be drawn in. Suddenly, he looked up and met my eyes. Like what you see. I quickly looked away, about to apologize, but he cut me off.
No apologies.
Answer my question. Yes, it's nice. So, do you like it, Oliver? I froze, my hands trembling slightly. The car swerved a little before I corrected it. I glanced at him again. The corners of his eyes were flushed. He was definitely drunk. You should get some rest. We're still half an hour from the airport, I said, deliberately changing the subject. Alexander just chuckled and didn't press the issue. He closed his eyes, but I could feel his gaze on me the whole way there. Alexander went on his business trip. I didn't see him at the office for a whole week, and I was relieved. After his drunken ramblings in the car, I was too embarrassed to even give him a work report. The drone project was finished, and I was assigned a new one on autonomous driving. This client, however, was a tough nut to crack. After 2 dinners, he still hadn't signed the contract. I found out he was also in talks with the Lu Corporation and quickly came up with a new strategy. In the end, I had to use both Plan A and Plan B to land the client. When Alexander got back to the office and heard the news, he asked me to have lunch with him. In his office, he listened to my whole story and couldn't help but praise me. Well done. I was worried you wouldn't be able to handle it, so I came back early. It's all thanks to your guidance, Mr. Sterling. No, it's because you're a fast learner. You're honestly the easiest employee I've ever had to manage. Every time he praised me, I felt a little embarrassed, and my ears would get hot. Alexander smiled and stared at me for a few seconds before saying, "So beautiful." "What?" Alexander snapped out of it. "Oh, I was talking about the roses." He pointed to the flower pots on the balcony, but his eyes were still fixed on me. His gaze was so intense I couldn't meet it. I gave a weak smile, feeling like something was off with Alexander, and quickly looked toward the balcony. The delicate rosebuds in the pots were still small, basking in the sun. They really were beautiful. At the end of the month, rumors of the Lu Corporation's impending bankruptcy were everywhere. One night, as I was walking home after working late, I felt like someone was following me. Just as I turned onto the main path of my apartment complex, I heard footsteps behind me. Before I could turn around, a handkerchief soaked in chloroform was pressed over my mouth and nose. My consciousness faded. When I woke up, it was pitch black outside, and the wind was howling. I opened my eyes and found my hands tied. I was sitting in the passenger seat of a car. Jackson was wearing a baseball cap, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. He was driving and glanced over at me. "You're awake?" "Jackson, what are you doing?" "Untie me right now. I'm taking you with me. We're leaving this place." His tone was absolute, his eyes stubbornly fixed on the road. I struggled against the ropes and realized my phone was gone. The doors were locked, and the scenery outside was flying by. I had no idea where we were, only that it was getting more and more remote. This wasn't the way to the airport. Was Jackson trying to flee the country? I wanted no part of this. Seeing no other cars around, I lunged for the steering wheel. Caught off guard, Jackson shoved me away. "Oliver, stay still or I'll have to get rough." "Then let me go. If I don't show up for work tomorrow, my colleagues will know something's wrong and call the police." He sneered. "Is that all you can think about right now? Work? Is Alexander Sterling really that good to you? You've only been with him for a short time, and you're already so loyal? Or is it—" His voice dropped, his eyes narrowed. "Have you fallen for him? What does it matter to you?" "Jackson, you can't escape. I'm telling you, let me go now." Seeing that I didn't directly answer his question, his eyes grew even darker. "In your dreams. Oliver, you're mine. No one can take you away from me." He slammed on the gas, pushing the car to over 100 miles per hour. My heart pounded in my chest as I frantically searched for a way out. Suddenly, the back of the car was hit hard. Jackson glanced in the rearview mirror, and his face changed. A black Land Rover was chasing us. After hitting our car a few times, a window rolled down, and someone shouted, "Jackson Lu, where do you think you're going? When are you going to pay back the money you owe my boss?" So it was a group of debt collectors. Jackson's face was grim. He didn't want to get tangled up with them. "Oliver, hold on tight." He reversed the car and tried to make a U-turn to escape. But they weren't going to let him get away. They sped up and rammed into us. The impact was so sudden that my head slammed into the windshield before the seatbelt jerked me back. My forehead throbbed with a burning pain. Jackson tried to accelerate away, but a white Bugatti sped out in front of us, blocking his path. I recognized that license plate. It was Alexander's. I sat up straight, a sense of hope rising in my chest. Jackson must have realized who it was too, because he let out a cold laugh. "What, you're that desperate for him to save you? Am I really that repulsive to you?" After saying that, he actually sped up, as if he was going to crash right into Alexander. My heart leaped into my throat, and I screamed, "Jackson, stop!" Just as we were about to collide, the Land Rover chasing us rammed into our rear, knocking us off course. The steering wheel jerked, and the car veered off the road. Beyond the guardrail was a steep, rugged slope with a few scattered trees. Jackson's car scraped against a tree and continued its uncontrolled descent toward a dark cliff below. My eyes widened in terror, my face pale. Suddenly, the Bugatti shot forward, positioning itself in front of Jackson's car, stopping us from going any further down. On the highway, The driver of the Land Rover saw things were getting out of hand and, fearing a fatal accident, quickly sped away. The sudden impact had startled Jackson too. Both cars were now perched precariously on the edge of the cliff, and neither of us dared to move. Even though Jackson's car was turned off, gravity was still slowly pulling it downwards. I frantically pulled at the ropes on my wrists, telling him to untie me. Jackson looked at the scene before him, taking a deep, shaky breath. "Oliver, come with me. I promise I'll be good to you. Do you really think I'd still believe you?" I looked at him coldly, and his grip on me loosened. "So, you're still choosing Alexander? Is this really the time to be talking about that?" He looked at me with an empty expression and let out a cold laugh. A few seconds later, he let go of my hand. Jackson unbuckled his seatbelt and threw open his door. Without a single glance back, he started climbing up the slope, not caring that my hands were tied and I could fall off the cliff at any moment. Ha! So this was what love meant to the great Jackson Lu. I tried to push open the passenger door, but it was jammed from the crash. In the Bugatti, Alexander seemed to be stuck. He struggled out of his car, limping over to my side, and smashed the window. "Oliver, jump, I'll catch you." He looked at me with worry, the car's headlights illuminating him like he was my only salvation. Alexander always managed to show up when I needed him most. The car was still sliding slowly. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, got up, and leaped out. A warm embrace caught me. Alexander's leg must have been injured, because he couldn't keep his balance. We tumbled down a few feet, ending up in a heap by a tree. I started to move, but he let out a soft cry of pain. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?"
I'm fine.
Alexander's face was pale as he reached over to untie my ropes. In the light from the cars, I could see his leg and arm were covered in blood. My eyes welled up as I reached for his pockets, but he grabbed my wrist. "Don't worry. I called the police before I got here. They should be here soon." "Good. Does your leg hurt? Are you hurt anywhere else? Should I try to stop the bleeding?" His fingers felt cold, so I took off my jacket and draped it over him. Alexander shook his head, a smile appearing in his eyes. The faint chirping of insects filled the air, mingling with the frantic beating of my heart. It had been a very, very long time since my heart had pounded like this for someone. Looking at me like that again? Alexander's lips curved into a smile. His voice was tired, but he was still in the mood to joke. "Oliver, if I had the strength right now, I would definitely kiss you." I looked into his eyes and finally understood that he had been serious in the car when he asked if I liked him. He was just as sincere now. I stared into his beautiful eyes, and as if possessed, I leaned down and kissed him. His lips were soft and a little cool. I held him close, feeling his heartbeat, which was just as fast as mine. The police cars and ambulances arrived quickly. He still had to deal with his company's debts and couldn't leave the country. Alexander had a minor fracture in his lower leg. While he was in the hospital, I visited him often to take care of him. He asked me to water the flowers in his office. Alexander never mentioned the kiss that night, so I was too shy to bring it up. After all, a man of his status being associated with something like homosexuality could have negative consequences. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something between us had subtly changed. After work, I bought some fruit and went to the hospital. Alexander had just had his dressing changed and hadn't put his shirt back on yet. When I walked in, he lazily held out a hand. "Oliver, my arm is injured, so it's not convenient. Could you help me with my shirt?" I glanced questioningly at his personal assistant, who was standing right there. The assistant quickly gathered his files. "I still have a few reports to write, so I'll head back to the office. Mr. Sterling, Oliver, goodbye." He closed the door behind him as he left. As I helped Alexander put on his shirt, my fingers kept brushing against his firm muscles. I have to say, he was in incredible shape, even more striking than a magazine model. Alexander watched me, and knowing how embarrassed I was, he deliberately drawled, "I'm the one without a shirt on, Oliver. Why are you blushing?" It's nothing." I quickly finished buttoning his shirt and covered him with the blanket. He hooked his finger around mine, a wicked smile on his face. "Oliver, you stutter whenever you get shy. Do you know how cute that is? My face turned an even deeper shade of red, and I couldn't bring myself to look into his intense eyes. Let's eat. I quickly set up the small table and opened the food containers. Alexander listened distractedly, then suddenly asked, "It's June now. Have my roses bloomed yet?" "Oh, yes, they have. Do you want me to take a picture for you?" "No need. Help me check out of the hospital tomorrow." I nodded, thinking he was just eager to get back to his flowers. But not long after Alexander returned to the company, all the blooming flowers on his balcony disappeared. That evening, Alexander asked me to have dinner with him. As I looked at the candlelit dinner table, I felt like something was off. Then Alexander presented a huge bouquet of white and pink roses, and I froze, my face flushing bright red. "Oliver, in light of your recent excellent performance, you'll be promoted to associate director next month. Would you do me the honor of discussing a business proposition with me?" What? My tongue was tied. I had never been in a situation like this before. Thank God he had booked out the entire rooftop restaurant, or we would have been surrounded by onlookers. "How about we negotiate a deal? A paid romance, term length, 1 lifetime. Is that a yes?" Alexander looked at me, his eyes full of laughter and sincerity. So that's why he had been growing those flowers for so long, all for today. Alexander could spend over a year growing Ophelia roses for a confession, just like he had patiently plotted his revenge against Jackson and carefully nurtured my potential. How could I not love someone who was willing to help me grow? Yes. I smiled and took the flowers from him. A heavy bouquet of 99 roses, each one a testament to his affection for me. The Liu family was on the verge of collapse, and many of the people Jackson had bullied in the past were now kicking him while he was down. For a while, the news was filled with evidence of the Liu family's crimes. Bribery, gang involvement, tax evasion, illegal fundraising. They couldn't escape any of it. It looked like Jackson was going to rot in prison for a long, long time. I was reading the news when Alexander, who had been watering his flowers, came over. He had gotten a new variety of rose and said he was planting it to give to me on my birthday. He wiped his hands and, seeing my phone screen, suddenly wrapped his arms around me. "Still looking? Are you that concerned about him?" "No, the app just pushed the notification." Alexander huffed and held the back of my neck, kissing me forcefully. Even at the office, he didn't hold back. I often had lunch with him in his office, and our colleagues had gotten used to it. At first, it was just about work, but then things changed and it became a more in-depth exchange. I worried someone might walk in and tried to push him away. He cornered me on the balcony, hooking his finger in my tie, refusing to let me go. "Oliver, I'm hungry," he said, his eyes dark, his fingers slowly moving up to loosen my tie. "You just ate." "I'm still hungry. I have work to do, you." Before I could finish, he was on me again. This paid romance thing was exhausting. Everyone else was done for the day, but I was still on the clock. That night, Alexander insisted on staying at my place. He had a huge mansion he could be living in, but he insisted on squeezing into my 1-bedroom apartment. Without his serious business suit, he could be like a childish kid, clinging to me and whining. After dinner, we curled up on the sofa to watch a movie. It was a rare moment of peace, and it felt incredibly comfortable. My small balcony was also filled with his flower pots now. He said he wanted me to think of him all the time. Before the movie ended, I fell asleep on his shoulder. Alexander played with my fingers, secretly measuring my ring size, then brought my hand to his lips for a kiss. "Fell asleep already? But we haven't taken care of tonight's business yet." In my dreams, I heard his low, soft laughter. Epilogue. Before Alexander took over the company, the Sterling Corporation had a strict no-office romance policy. But his father never expected that the first person to break that rule would be his own precious son. Mr. Sterling was just about to go on a vacation to a tropical island with his wife when he got the news. Alexander chose a moment when his father was in a good mood to break it to him. "Dad, I have something to tell you, but don't freak out." Mr. Sterling scoffed, a look of disdain on his face. "I've seen it all, son. Spit it out." "I'm with Oliver Chun, the director from the company. We've been together for 3 years, And if everything goes well, we'll be getting married at the end of the year." Mr. Sterling froze. His wife, Catherine, glared at him. "Did you forget the house rules? Use your words. No swearing and no temper tantrums." Alexander added, "Oh, and Oliver is a man. You two have been nagging me to get married for years, so I thought you'd be happy." Catherine froze too. She opened her mouth, about to swear, but seeing her husband's smug look, she forced herself to hold it in. Mr. Sterling took a deep breath and threw down his cigar. He and his wife paced back and forth in the living room, muttering to themselves, until they finally calmed down. "I'm over 50. I've seen my fair share of storms, but you, kid, you always manage to surprise me. How could this happen? I tell you to keep an eye on your son, but all you care about is business. Look what you've done. Why are you blaming me? It was his choice. Who else am I supposed to blame? He has your last name." They argued for days before finally, reluctantly, accepting the reality of the situation. When Alexander went to the office, his personal assistant, who had found out he'd come out, was full of admiration and couldn't help but ask, "Mr. Sterling, if you liked Director Chun all along, why didn't you just snatch him away from the beginning?" "No, I had to let him see Jackson for who he really was, to let him lose all hope. Only then could he be completely mine." The assistant shivered at his boss's sharp, cunning smile. He was just glad Oliver had been hired as a manager, otherwise he might have been out of a job. For the holidays, Catherine told Alexander to bring his partner home for dinner so they could meet. Alexander smiled, knowing the marriage was a done deal. He looked up and saw Oliver on the balcony, watering his flowers for him. Surrounded by a sea of blooms, Oliver was a beautiful sight. He thought back to the first time he had ever seen him. It was at a banquet. Oliver was wearing a simple suit, standing next to a bouquet of roses, waiting for Jackson. Surprisingly, the man and the white flowers complemented each other perfectly. He was stunning. Later, whenever he targeted Jackson, he couldn't help but notice Oliver. He discovered that Oliver was incredibly capable, a diamond in the rough. But he also noticed that the young assistant was unusually devoted to Jackson. He would always have a hand warmer ready on a snowy day, would pick him up no matter how late a business dinner went, and would thoughtfully prepare hangover tea. He saw that the young assistant's feelings for Jackson were different. Gradually, Alexander started to feel a pang of jealousy. Later, when he saw Oliver being bullied, he thought, if he were my assistant, I would never let anyone lay a hand on him. Once Alexander had an idea, he would always see it through. When you find something you treasure, you plan your approach carefully.